My microphone is broken. She broke it with Obama. She and Obama stole my microphone. They took it to Kenya.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at presidential impersonations through the years.
It is I, George W. Bush, and you might remember the W stands for What's Up?
Part 1. You can't do that on radio. Since George Washington was first sworn in, few positions have commanded more authority and respect than President of the United States. Throughout the centuries, though, there have been instances, and even entire terms, when the president seemed more like a ringmaster in the circus of clowns we call Congress.
Son, do you know what it means to be president of the United States? Everyone looks up to you. You're the most powerful leader of the most powerful nation in the whole world.
It's gonna be cool, Dad. I'm pretty psyched.
Even history's best presidents had questionable moments, making POTUS one of the easiest targets for satire. In some cases, we remember the impersonations more than the presidents themselves.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
That was very clear. Very dramatic and clear.
Obama would say something like, we believe that barriers of any kind act as an obstruction to people's good relationships. What the are you talking about?
Although commonplace now, comedic impressions of the president were once considered edgy, even taboo. Comedy has evolved over the past several decades, ironically mirroring the devolution of our standards for commander-in-chief.
Here's the deal.
No, it's not.
Excuse me, please.
No, whatever you're going to say, no.
Comedian Will Jordan, himself a famous impressionist, did a fair deal of research into the history of presidential impressions. Based on his findings, the first president to be impersonated on stage was Teddy Roosevelt in a minstrel show. On a wider scale, Will Rogers was arguably the first performer to gain significant attention for mimicking a sitting president. During a 1928 radio broadcast, Rogers' impression of President Calvin Coolidge proved so convincing that listeners thought it was the real deal. Rogers, who supported Coolidge, issued an apology to the President and First Lady days later, promising it would never happen again. Rogers didn't exactly keep his word, as he'd go on to poke fun at Franklin D. Roosevelt over the radio, followed by another apology. Part 2. JFK, LBJ, and Dick. Although FDR had a great sense of humor about it, presidential parodies carried the risk of igniting controversy. That's not to say they were outlawed.
They smile every hour out of every daylight saving day. They smile. Try it. It feels good.
Gee, kid, that's the best Churchill I ever heard.
Performers like Dean Murphy and Arthur Blake could be heard imitating FDR in clubs. Before lending his voice to characters like Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound, a young Dawes Butler impersonated Roosevelt, among others, in front of crowds. Actor Art Gilmore voiced Roosevelt in multiple films, most notably 1942's Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Today we're all soldiers. We're all on the front. We need more songs to express America. I know you and your comrades will give them to us.
Yet the idea of basing one's comedy career around impersonating a president didn't take off until the early 60s, when Vaughn Meader hit the scene. Meader didn't have to drastically change his Massachusetts accent to sound like President John F. Kennedy, amounting to 15 game-changing minutes of fame.
Now, just a minute, who do you think you are? Now, let me say this about that. Number one, he's not an expert on politics, but I am.
Meader's Kennedy impression was at the center of the 1962 comedy album The First Family. An unprecedented hit, it sold millions of copies and won the Grammy for Album of the Year.
Well, after 2 years of brushing with the Crest toothpaste, our group had 21% fewer cavities with Crest.
Meader soon started making the rounds on radio and television programs like The Ed Sullivan Show. Barely a year into Meader's newfound superstardom, tragedy struck when President Kennedy was assassinated.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Lee Harvey Oswald inadvertently killed Meader's career in the process. Not only were his booked appearances canceled, but The First Family was removed from circulation. Being synonymous with Kennedy, Meader struggled to find work. Even when he moved away from Kennedy, his subsequent albums proved unsuccessful. Although Meader's time in the spotlight was brief, his Kennedy impersonation changed comedy for future generations.
When will we send a man to the moon?
whenever Senator Goldwater wants to go.
With the country mourning Kennedy, comedians weren't quick to lampoon his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson. As the next election approached, though, Johnson became ripe for parody. Disney animator Ward Kimball made an independent 1968 short entitled Escalation, in which Johnson's nose grows like Pinocchio's, or maybe something more suggestive.
Where the grapes of wrath are stored, he hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. He is marching on.
Johnson was portrayed by Paul Frees, who voiced characters like Ludwig von Drake and Boris Badenov. Comedian David Fry also gained prominence with his Johnson impression. Of course, Fry became even more associated with Johnson's political opponent, and ultimately the next president, Richard Nixon.
My favorite people. And you are my favorite people. Make no mistake about that.
If anyone could rival Fry as the quintessential Nixon impersonator, it would be the man of 1,000 voices. No, not Mel Blanc, the other man of 1,000 voices, Rich Little. Little also impersonated Kennedy, which got one of his comedy albums pulled. Unlike Meter, though, Little had more than one presidential impersonation up his sleeve.
Well, I'm delighted to be here tonight and part of this Jerry Lewis Super Show. You know, I've known Jerry for years. As a matter of fact, Jerry Lewis was the very first choice for the movie that I made, Bedtime for Bonzo.
From Kennedy onward, this Canadian-born comedian has mimicked every U.S. president. But Nixon made his career.
I just got back from Hollywood, where I was working on a new motion picture. It's called Planet of the Tapes.
Between Billy West on Futurama,
a good Republican body, God, I loved it,
and Dan Hedaya in 1999's Dick, Nixon remains one of the most popular presidents to parody.
I remember when Julie and, what's her name, Trisha, were that age. If it wasn't about makeup or Frankie Avalon, they didn't give a hoot.
However, nobody can compete with Little's tenure, still playing Nixon well into his 80s.
Let me ask Nixon himself. What happens if you didn't resign? What do you think would have happened?
I think that I would still be president. Because if I had resigned, I would have taken the country with me.
Nixon only gave comedians more to work with thanks to the Watergate scandal, paving the way for Vice President Gerald Ford to take his place. A little over a year into Ford's only term, a sketch comedy series premiered, becoming the primary source of presidential impressions ever since.
NBC Saturday Night.
Part 3, Live from New York. In June 1975, Ford tripped down the last few stairs while exiting Air Force One. This minor incident might have gone overlooked in a pre-SNL world. Thanks to Chevy Chase's accident-prone take, it became the defining moment of Ford's presidency.
Yes, well, on that point, Mr. Krause, Mr. Krause.
Although Ford initially didn't appreciate Chase's clumsy caricature, he eventually found the humor in it, appearing on SNL in 1976.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
Sometime after losing the presidency, Ford said, "Chevy definitely cost some votes, but I had to admit, he was damn funny."
I can name that tune in 4 notes.
Just as Ford exited the White House after one term, Chase didn't stay at Studio 8H long. Presidential parodies remained an SNL staple, with Dan Aykroyd as the definitive Jimmy Carter.
I did some bad things.
And a revolving door of Ronald Reagan's, most notably Phil Hartman.
Well, I hope I've answered your questions as best I could, given the very little that I know. Goodbye, and God bless you.
Presidential parodies don't get much more iconic than Dana Carvey as George H.W. Bush, who'd invite the SNL cast member to the White House's holiday party.
We are on the track. We're getting the job done. We can do more, but let's stay the course. 1,000 points of light.
Carvey juggled candidates during the 1992 election, playing Bush and Ross Perot, while Hartman impersonated Bill Clinton.
We cannot pay for everything. For example, cooties are covered.
but not the heebie-jeebies.
With Clinton's ascension to office, Hartman won over audiences with his down-to-earth impression, portraying him as the kind of president you'd like to grab a Big Mac with.
Don't tell Mrs. Clinton. Jim, let me tell you something. There's going to be a whole bunch of things we don't tell Mrs. Clinton.
Leaving SNL, Carvey kicked off his short-lived sketch comedy show with a controversial Clinton impression, complete with breastfeeding and a hen's rear end.
And look, I've had myself surgically fitted with a hen's ass. So, with these warm, downy feathers, I can give presidential warmth to these hatching eggs right here.
At the time, this was seen as shocking. Following the Monica Lewinsky scandal 2 years later, though, Clinton became more susceptible to savage parodies, with Darrell Hammond leaving his mark.
What? Yeah, I just bit my lip and did the thumb thing.
SNL wasn't much kinder to George W. Bush, with Will Ferrell depicting him as a clueless oaf who got the job because of who his daddy is. Insert your own punchline here.
I believe that some of his figures may be inaccurate.
Beyond SNL, this era gave way to Bush impersonators like Steve Bridges,
Screw him,
and Timothy Bottoms. Yet none quite had Ferrell's cultural impact, introducing the word strategery into the zeitgeist.
Strategery.
On the heels of two divisive presidents, SNL had a harder time satirizing Barack Obama, especially compared to his competitors. The real challenge was finding somebody to play Obama with Fred Armisen feeling out of place for a few obvious reasons.
Who drives around every evening after work, vandalizing Hillary's yard signs.
Meanwhile, Reggie Brown broke out as a professional Obama impersonator.
I know. That's why you're staying here.
Comedians like Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key also turned in memorable Obama parodies.
These key words are being used, amongst other things, to prevent terrorists from using weapons of mass destruction.
SNL finally found a spot-on Obama with Jay Farrow, who'd curiously leave after the president's term ended.
Questions like, is this the first step towards war? What can the United States do? And hold up, what's Crimea?
Where Obama was one of the trickier presidents to parody, Donald Trump practically gift-wrapped material to comedians. Before Trump got involved in politics, actor John D. Domenico made a living mimicking the Home Alone 2 star.
Hello, everybody. It's me, your favorite Bibble president. I'm the greatest Bibble president in the history of presidents.
Darrell Hammond had played Trump on SNL, but throughout his presidential campaign and term, Alec Baldwin took the nation by storm with his Emmy-winning portrayal, much to the real Trump's annoyance.
This man is clearly unfit to be commander-in-chief.
Jim Carrey, who previously impersonated presidents like Reagan, faced off against Baldwin's Trump as Joe Biden.
I'm holding my bladder, let's get at her.
Just when we thought James Austin Johnson and Alex Moffat would be gearing up for a Trump-Biden rematch, a game change left the world asking, is Maya Rudolph's schedule open?
This has been a difficult year for all of us, but I really do feel that we are about to see some light.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into settings and switch on your notifications. Epilogue: Presidents and Parody. What's the difference? Between Will Rogers' innocent radio broadcast and the modern late-night landscape, presidential impersonations have come a long way, even if Washington, D.C. has taken several steps backwards.
What I meant to say was, I'd appreciate it very much if you could just allow me to finish my responses as opposed to sabotaging every waking moment with a toxic geyser of verbal diarrhea, you cracked-out, turd-hurling sack of rancid dog snot.
Now more than ever, it's hard to find the line between parody and reality, with so many presidents feeling like caricatures of themselves.
You made Barack Obama angry. And when you make Barack Obama angry, he turns into The Rock Obama.
And yet, people still put them on a pedestal, ignoring the elephant and donkey in the room. With every president having loyal followers, we need satire to remind us that nobody is perfect, especially politicians.
Love to just take care of the greenhouse effect in one fell swoop up here. Not gonna sacrifice jobs down here. Not gonna.
Who knows what impressions await us in 2028 and beyond? We may fear for the future, but as long as the First Amendment remains intact, the Rich Littles, Dana Carveys, and Will Ferrells of the world will keep us laughing.
There are people in the world who wish to do us harm. You mean evildoers?
What's your favorite presidential impersonation? Let us know in the comments.
Can't even think about it. First of all, against the law. Babs wouldn't like it. Well, it's probably just 4 years. Hey, wait for me, son. I'm right behind you.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.